Conflict is something that most of us avoid. It is uncomfortable, frightening, and reeks with the stench of the unknown. Even with the ones we love, conflict almost feels like a competition, where each family member is jockeying for enough points to somehow win the game. The way that family members manage conflict and create resolution is a cornerstone to healthy family living. So I look at it as we have some challenges in managing conflict because we're not always necessarily taught different conflict tools and resolution tools. So it's kind of like learning a new language that we haven't been introduced to or even guided through. So I think that's something that we can look at when we are talking about families, education, social issues, is what tools have we been given to deal with conflict? And that'll make things a lot easier. And then as we practice, just as we practice anything else, we get better at it. I see conflict resolution as integrative. So when we look at our lives from either a physical, emotional, mental, even spiritual level, conflict resolution is a tool that can really support all of those areas. And if we think about it in terms of health and wellness, when we talk about something like heart health, and we don't take care of our hearts very well, then lots of other issues can begin to stem from that. And it's the same with conflict resolution. So even as adults, if we begin to learn how to take care and how to frame conflict as an opportunity, then we begin to open up opportunities to deal with things in all aspects of our life in a more healthy way. And if we are not tending to those conflict tools, then it can sometimes create more issues along the way. So I see it as a tool you can learn anytime in life and something that will help you holistically and all around. So part of my passion for conflict resolution also spurs from my own personal experience of being part of a family that has an addict and alcoholic member. And growing up, there was a lot of conflict around the addiction and the alcoholism. And so it's really difficult when one person in the nuclear family has those kinds of issues. But what can happen is it can be an opportunity and an invitation for the entire family to begin to delve deeper on how each person looks at conflict and begins to deal with conflict. And so not only for the person who's struggling with the addiction or the issues at hand, they're already wrestling with many ways that conflict shows up in their life. But it's also, again, an opportunity for the rest of the family members to go within and do some introspection on what conflict looks like for them and finding new tools and opportunities. So what I'd like to say is approaching it as a holistic family body instead of just isolating out the one person who's really struggling, because we all struggle with conflict in our own ways, and it shows up for us in different ways and through stress responses. So not only is the person that is really struggling, they are going through a lot of different stress responses such as fight, flight, freeze, but the family members are also going through those stress responses. So the more we can gain tools to begin to learn how to deal with those stresses, then that's where we begin to delve into healthy conflict resolution and even conflict transformation as a family together. Conflict transformation can go beyond just the idea of a resolution, because sometimes conflict resolution can be a long game. It doesn't mean it's something overnight. Many times it may be the process of revisiting issues and conversations and situations over and over again to continue to make baby steps. But the transformation process is how it actually begins to transform us as individuals and then also us as a group when we're working together on finding solutions for the problem or the conflicts. So as we begin to embark and even embrace the process, it can sometimes feel really uncomfortable and frustrating because, again, solutions aren't found overnight. But as we embark and we understand that it's a long-term process sometimes, then we can begin to look at the transformation as a whole. We look at transformation that happens within us We look at transformation that can happen one-on-one with one relationship in particular, and then we can look at a transformation that can happen as a group or a family, and begin to feel those within inside of ourselves, and then also look at it with each other. So one thing I like to do is link conflict resolution strategies with those stress responses that we were just talking about. So we have 4 general conflict resolution strategies, and it's contending, yielding, withdrawing, and problem solving. So when we contend, that's the idea of the fight mode, and that's when we talk about fight, flight, freeze. And then also we have an alternative called a relaxation response that can be linked with problem solving. But we have that contending, that fight mode, where we tend to maybe push our agenda on other people. We're really pushing for something that we want. We may not be as open in that mode to another person's needs or wants. And then we have a yielding where it's the opposite. We begin to give over what we need or our interests or something that we're aiming for. We begin to give that over to somebody else and say, you take what you need, I'll even settle for less, and then we'll move on, which isn't always really sustainable in the long term. It can be maybe a short-term solution. And just to say none of these are good, bad, right, or wrong. They are always just solutions for what you have at the time. So we have the yielding, we have the withdrawing or freezing in our stress responses, that we may have the instinct to just get out of the situation. We may not want to talk about it, we may not want to participate, and that's a withdrawal or a fight or a flight response. And then the last one is our problem solving, which ultimately that's what we're really aiming towards when we're looking for resolution and we're looking for transformation, is not only beginning to problem solve within our own selves on how we frame conflict, but also problem solving with each other as a family. And so that's also can be linked to what is called a relaxation response in our bodies. And that is when parts of our brain that is the rational part of the brain, the problem solving part of our brain, is what I like to call online. And the fight, flight, freeze part of our brain is beginning to minimize, it's beginning to calm down. Because we have this little alarm system in our bodies and our brains, and it's a really incredible alarm system. It's part of the amygdala part of our brain that begins to signal that we might be in danger, we might be under threat. But if we can begin to slow down and just pause and honestly take some deep breaths, those are 2 really simple ways to begin to bring our rational part of our brain back online. It begins to give us some space and time to navigate that conflict and to navigate the situation. And it begins to help enable our language center so we can find the words that we're looking for. So going back to those tools, pausing and breathing are something you can start with today. They're not anything big. They're not anything somebody might be unfamiliar with. They're something that they are both very accessible. And making sure that you're taking some long inhales and long exhales. And also maybe just stepping away for a moment if you need just a break from the situation or from the conversation to regroup, reevaluate, and figure out the direction you want to go. So taking a break, breathing, pausing, those can all be really accessible and helpful tools. Absolutely always hope for families who feel stuck in conflict. And I think what happens is we often feel stuck because sometimes we continue to do the same things over and over again, expecting different results, and that can feel frustrating. And so going back to taking a moment to pause and reflect on what might not be working and what you might be doing over and over again, even as a group or individually, that don't seem to be leading to the answers that you're looking for or the situations you're looking for. And you might try something new and that might not work either, and that's okay. So beginning to understand that process piece that we talked about earlier, that it's not an overnight fix or not an overnight solution, but it's full of experimentation, it's full of trial and error. So continuing to commit to that process, and I know it can be really exhausting and it can be sometimes frustrating and you can feel stuck, But knowing that just one small change, it doesn't have to be a major overhaul, it can be one small change that can really start to open doors to new possibility and new hope. If your family is struggling with conflict and would like some more resources and tools and guidance through the process and the situations, please reach out to me. I'm at rtoservices.com. You can email me at Jenn, Jenn, at rtoservices.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at WeAreRTO, ARTIO. For more support if your family is undergoing conflict, you can go to parentshelpingparents.info. Take one small initiative to reach out and gain that new tool, and then the possibilities are endless.